From the moment we're born, we're told life has meaning, that if we work hard, dream big, and stay positive, happiness will follow. But what if none of that is true? What if the very act of existing, of wanting, striving, desiring, is the root of our misery? Most philosophies try to make life bearable. Schopenhauer didn't. He stripped away the illusions and exposed something most thinkers are too afraid to admit. He believed that life itself is suffering, not by mistake, but by nature, that everything we do, love, work, ambition, is just a symptom of a deeper disease, the will to live. In this video, we'll explore the life and thought of Arthur Schopenhauer, the philosopher who dared to ask a brutal question. What if the best we can hope for is not happiness, but escape? Stay with me, because once you understand his philosophy, you may never look at life the same way again. Arthur Schopenhauer wasn't just a philosopher, he was a prophet of life's darker truths. Born in 1788 in Danzig, Germany, he would come to be known as the philosopher of pessimism, the man who saw suffering not as a problem to be solved, but as the essence of existence itself. As a boy, he was set to follow his father into commerce, but that path collapsed when his father, gripped by depression, was found dead in a canal, possibly suicide. Arthur would later say he inherited that same darkness. He adored his father, but his mother, a socialite and writer, he found cold and cruel. He once said the happiest days of his childhood were those spent away from her. That early emotional neglect carved into him a deep sense of isolation, a mistrust of others, a craving for solitude. Eventually, Schopenhauer abandoned trade for philosophy. At just 30, he published The World as Will and Representation, a sweeping vision of reality as driven by a blind, endless force. The will. Desire, he argued, was not a path to fulfillment, but the root of all suffering. He believed he had solved philosophy's core problem, but the world didn't care. While Hegel drew massive crowds in Berlin, Schopenhauer's masterpiece went unnoticed. He dismissed Hegel as a fraud and saw progress as a delusion. To Schopenhauer, history didn't improve, it just repeated suffering in new forms. Only late in life did his ideas find an audience, after the release of Parerga and Paralipomena, a set of essays expanding his work. Fame came slowly, but even then he kept to himself, walking daily with his poodles, all named Atman, a Sanskrit word for true self, and reading the Upanishads before bed. Arthur Schopenhauer's life was quiet, cold, sad, and lonely. But in that silence, he uncovered something eternal, a truth that still unnerves us today, that behind all we love, strive for, and believe in, there may only be the endless, aching will, and the question of whether we can ever truly escape it. The world is my idea. This is a truth which holds good for everything that lives and knows, though man alone can bring it into reflective and abstract consciousness. That's how Arthur Schopenhauer opens his most important work, The World as Will and Representation, with a sentence that flips everything we think we know about reality. For Schopenhauer, the world is not something we simply live in. It's something our minds create. What we see, hear, and experience is just a representation, a mental image shaped by our senses and brain. We're not perceiving the world directly. We're trapped in our own heads, gazing at shadows, not the source. This view stems from Immanuel Kant, who claimed that reality, the thing in itself, lies beyond our grasp. But Schopenhauer took it further. He argued that there is one part of reality we don't just perceive. We are it. That part is our body. Through it, we don't just observe. We feel, strive, and suffer. It reveals the core of all existence, an irrational, unconscious, and relentless force he called the will. Not will as in conscious choice, but as a blind, chaotic drive pulsing through all life. It's in us, in animals, in nature, in the cosmos. It is not rational, not thoughtful, and not intentional. It just wants, endlessly and often pointlessly. The will is why we crave, struggle, chase, and despair. Desire never ends. It only shifts. We hunger, we eat, we're satisfied, then we hunger again. It's a cycle that never stops. As Schopenhauer put it, from desire I rush to satisfaction. From satisfaction I leap to desire. We don't live in peace. We live in motion, pushed, not pulled. Not tempted by joy, but driven by need. Even before Freud's psychoanalysis, Schopenhauer argued that most of our inner life is unknown to us. Our actions, decisions, and speech are, for the most part, unconsciously motivated by our drives, so that we do not even know our full inner selves. And we mistake this for normal life. Study, work, marry, have children, live happily ever after. But do we ever arrive? Or are we just leaves tossed by a raging river of wanting? At best, a desire is satisfied for a short time, but immediately after another desire will emerge. There's no endpoint of satisfaction. It is an infinite striving. To describe this restless will, he compares our condition to Ixion, the mythological king doomed to spin forever on a fiery wheel for defying the gods, a powerful metaphor for the will's torment. For Schopenhauer, this wasn't just philosophy, it was revelation. The world is will and representation. One side, illusion, the other, suffering. And what of reason, of logic and thought? They are not in control. He believed the intellect is merely the lame man riding on the shoulders of the blind strong man. The will. We may think we choose, but it is the will that drives us. If we want to understand reality, he said, we must stop looking outward and look inward, because the real battle is not outside, it's within. And that battle is endless unless we learn how to face it. What if suffering isn't just part of life, but its very essence? Arthur Schopenhauer didn't just believe that suffering was unavoidable. He believed it was fundamental. The world, he said, is the manifestation of the will, a blind, restless force that pulses beneath all of nature. And if the world is will, then the world is pain. For every desire fulfilled, 10 more are denied. The moment we grasp what we want something else. We are trapped in a cycle, forever striving, never satisfied. Life swings like a pendulum backward and forward between pain and ennui, Schopenhauer wrote. After man had transformed all pains and torments into the conception of hell, there remained nothing for heaven except ennui. Pleasure to him wasn't real joy. It was merely the brief absence of pain. And when pain fades, boredom creeps in. That, too, is suffering. We live in anticipation and memory, rarely in the moment. Most of our torment lies not in pain itself, but in the thought of pain, especially the shadow that looms over every living thing. Death. How much more suffering is caused by the thought of death, Schopenhauer said, than by death itself. Nature, in its raw honesty, is brutal. Schopenhauer tells us of turtles that crawl out of the sea to lay their eggs, only to be torn apart alive by dogs, who are, in turn, devoured by tigers. This horror, he says, plays out again and again. That is the nature of existence. For this, these turtles were born. Humans, no different. Man is a wolf to man. We romanticize heaven, but Schopenhauer insisted that we have no material from this world to imagine it. But when Dante came to describe heaven and its delights, he said, he had an insurmountable difficulty, for our world affords no materials at all for this. We huddle together like hedgehogs in winter, needing warmth, yet pricking each other with our spines when we get too close. Too far and we freeze. The life of every individual, if we survey it as a whole, is really a tragedy, but gone through in detail, it has the character of comedy, and yet we are shocked to find ourselves here, alive. A man finds himself, to his great astonishment, suddenly existing after thousands and thousands of years of non-existence. The heart rebels against this. We fear death, but when life becomes unbearable, when the weight of existence exceeds the fear of oblivion, some make a desperate choice. When the terrors of life outweigh the terrors of death, Schopenhauer said, a man will put an end to his life. He viewed suicide not with judgment, but with compassion. Who has not had friends or loved ones who've chosen this end? And everyone is supposed to think of them with revulsion. I say no, and no again. But Schopenhauer still rejected suicide as a solution. Why? Because it only destroys the individual body, not the will itself. It does not escape suffering, it only interrupts it. The thing in itself remains unaffected. Even as the rainbow endures, however fast the drops may change. The only true escape, he said, was denying the will, renouncing desire itself, not by choosing death, but by choosing detachment. If pain is the price of wanting, what happens if we stop wanting at all? Can freedom be found not in chasing life, but in letting go of it? Have you ever wondered if falling in love is truly your choice? What if the butterflies in your stomach weren't yours at all, but a trick played by something deeper, something older, something blind? For Schopenhauer, the will, the blind, unconscious force driving all life, finds its most cunning expression in the will to reproduce. We believe we marry, have children, or seek intimacy for happiness. But he says this is an illusion, a mask. Beneath it lies the true motive, the survival of the species. He writes, each seeks a mate that will neutralize his defects, lest they be inherited. A physically weak man will seek a strong woman. Even what we find beautiful, he suggests, is often the opposite of our own traits, because the will is trying to balance the offspring. In this view, falling in love isn't a romance, it's a manipulation, a biological conspiracy led by the will to secure its eternal repetition. The sexual impulse, Schopenhauer writes, is the inner life of the tree, upon which the life of the individual grows like a leaf. And what happens to a leaf? It fades, it falls, it dies. Procreation, he says, is the climax of the individual life, after which decline begins. Thus, the alternation of death and reproduction is as the pulse beat of the species. Death is for the species what sleep is for the individual. To Schopenhauer, this is nature's doctrine of immortality, not ours. We die so the species may live. We love so the will can repeat itself. But if everything, love, family, ambition, even joy, is just the will using us for its own ends, is there any way out? Can we break the cycle? Yes, Schopenhauer says, but only through a radical act. We must learn to deny the will, not repress it, transcend it. The moment we stop chasing, stop desiring, wanting, grasping, we loosen the will's grip. Through deep contemplation, self-discipline, or moments of aesthetic rapture, the endless inner craving begins to quiet. This is not an easy path. It's not mainstream, it's not pleasant, but it is freedom. True sages, monks, ascetics, those who turn away from ego, from pleasure, even from the self, they aren't just renouncing the world, they are performing a metaphysical rebellion against the will itself. They are, Schopenhauer believed, the only ones who see clearly. To live without craving, to exist without desire. This is not mere suffering, it is the escape from suffering. Where others are trapped in the eternal cycle of striving, The one who denies the will steps off the wheel. And in that silence, perhaps for the first time, we are no longer puppets. We become free. In a world ruled by suffering and restless desire, is there any relief? Schopenhauer believed there was, but only for a moment, and that moment was art. For the person of genius, life brings a deeper burden. They feel more, see more, suffer more, but they are also gifted with the rarest of reprieves, the aesthetic experience. In the act of pure contemplation, whether gazing at a painting, hearing music, or standing before a vast mountain range, something remarkable happens. We are for the moment set free from the miserable striving of the will, Schopenhauer writes. We keep the Sabbath of the penal servitude of willing. The wheel of Ixion stands still. We become will-less, released from desire, from longing, from the self. We do not want the beautiful thing, we simply perceive it. This subjective stillness is paired with an objective power. Art shows us something eternal, beyond the chaos of time, space, and causality. Art reveals the Platonic ideas, perfect, unchanging archetypes of form, essence, and truth. Art, Schopenhauer says, allows us to participate in eternity. From sculpture to cinema, poetry to video games, art offers us a brief escape from the prison of ourselves. It lifts us out of our private agony and into a shared, eternal gaze. And sometimes, the escape is not just peaceful, it is awe-inspiring. This is the sublime, the feeling we get before a thunderstorm or under the night sky, when we are reduced to a speck, overwhelmed, and yet strangely elevated. One may consciously tear away from one's world, and with both a loss of ourself and a liberation from the will, we experience a state of elevation. No art form achieves this more completely for Schopenhauer than music. Unlike other arts which copy the ideas, music speaks directly to the will itself. Music is a direct objectification and copy of the whole will. It does not speak of shadows, but of the thing itself. In music, the deepest recesses of our being find expression. Our torment is not just silenced, it is transformed. Nietzsche was right. Without music, life would be a mistake. But there's more. Aesthetics don't just soothe us, they awaken us. In the absence of the will, in the mirror of beauty, we see that we are not alone. From this awareness, Schopenhauer's ethics emerge. When we see the suffering of another, not as an outsider, but as one who feels their pain in our bones, we become capable of compassion. This, he believed, is the root of all morality. Our ultimate oneness with each other is the basis of morality, compassion, and empathy. To harm another is to harm ourselves. To relieve another's suffering is to find serenity in our own soul. In this intimate experience of suffering, through art, through empathy, we come closest to grace, a kind of sacred stillness where the world for once does not demand anything from us. Just this, to see, to feel, to be still for a moment. We are not striving, we are not lacking, we are not alone. Art does not heal the wound. It shows us that the wound is shared, and in that we are saved, if only for a while. We live in pursuit of wealth, of comfort, of meaning, but Schopenhauer reminds us, the possession of things cannot quiet the hunger within. Only wisdom can do that, and not the kind of wisdom found in books alone. Philosophy, he says, is to be understood as experience. It has to be felt, not merely thought. It is not in commentary, but in life itself. Raw, contradictory, difficult, that truth reveals itself. Reading, he warns, can become a substitute for thinking. When we read, another person thinks for us. If anyone spends almost the whole day reading, he gradually loses the capacity for thinking. Many have read themselves stupid. Reflection without experience becomes hollow, like a book filled with footnotes, but no story. The world is the text, our reflection, the commentary. Genius, Schopenhauer writes, is the power to leave one's own interest, wishes, and aims entirely out of sight. The clear and impartial perception of the objective, the essential, and the universal. True intelligence is the rare moment when the intellect breaks free from the tyranny of the will, when it acts not as a servant of desire but as a witness to existence. These moments, brief, luminous, are the essence of genius. But this gift comes at a price. People are sociable, Schopenhauer tells us, to the degree that they are intellectually poor and generally vulgar. He does not say this with disdain, but with a kind of quiet mourning. What makes people sociable is their inner poverty. They are unable to bear solitude because their inner emptiness drives them to society. To be intelligent is to be alone. To be wise is to be still. The more one sees, the more one suffers. In a world of noise, Schopenhauer teaches the defiance of silence, acceptance, stillness, quiet rebellion. It is not resignation. It is not despair. It is the knowledge that in letting go of striving, in ceasing to chase, we become truly ourselves. Philosophy is not an escape from the world. It is the gaze that looks directly at the world and does not flinch, not to fix it, not to change it, but to understand it and to live gently, in spite of it. The more intelligent one is, the more pain one has. You don't have to agree with Schopenhauer, but you can't ignore him. In a world obsessed with success, stimulation, and eternal happiness, he offers something no one else dares to, the truth. Not comfort, not escape, but an unflinching mirror held up to existence and the courage to look. He asked us to see the will beneath the world, the hidden storm behind our smiles, the quiet desperation behind our pursuits. So, will you keep chasing the illusion, or will you dare to stop and ask, what if letting go is the only true freedom? This is not a philosophy of despair. It is a philosophy of seeing clearly, and in that clarity, perhaps, a strange kind of peace. Now ask yourself, what would your life look like if you lived without illusion? If this stirred something in you, read Schopenhauer, reflect, share this with someone who's tired of the noise, and above all, stay awake.